in the U.S. around the world is that a religion, a vast and religion that speaks in many, many different voices, but emphasizes the dignity of all human beings, has been swallowed by ethno-nationalism. In many Jewish communities in the United States today, you get in more trouble for challenging the legitimacy of the State of Israel than for questioning the authority of the Torah, right? The social penalties for being a critic of Israel are much greater than the social penalties for violating Shabbat or keeping kosher, which are foundational principles in Jewish faith. I think something similar in some ways is happening among many white Christians. In the era of Donald Trump, these people seem to think that if you don't have an American passport, you are worthless. It's as if that Christianity's universal message has been swallowed by the ethno-nationalism of America first. And in a way, when you see Jewish discourse about Israel, you see something similar. The state is sacred, and what our tradition says about human beings is ultimately devalued. Trump views Palestinians as subhuman, and therefore wants to oversee a mass ethnic cleansing, which would be one of the greatest crimes of the century. And all across Washington, you hear people essentially shrug, or people say maybe it's impractical. I don't care. The question is not whether it's impractical. The question is whether we should be thinking about how we get Donald Trump in front of the International Criminal Court as a war criminal. This is one of the most monstrous things an American president has said in our time. And the fact that it can be assimilated like this is just testament to the profound dehumanization of Palestinians that suffuses American public discourse. Where Israel was central and where we thought about Israel in terms of what it meant for Jewish safety, a state for Jews where Jews could be safe after the Holocaust. And that was a source of great psychological security, especially for my grandmother, for older people in my generation who themselves had experienced a lot of trauma in their lives. I'm embarrassed to say it was really not until my 30s, when I went to spend time with Palestinians in the West Bank, that I began to really face what Israel and Zionism had meant for Palestinians. And you're exactly right. Every American media discussion of Gaza should start with the fact that people in Gaza, most of them are not from Gaza. They are people who are from families that were forcibly expelled from what is now Israel. Many of them can see the lands from which their parents and grandparents were expelled from Gaza. They can see these fertile, relatively uncrowded territories while they live crowded into a ghetto half the size of New York City that the UN called unlivable for human beings before October 7th. And so, yes, if Gaza is unlivable because Israel and the United States have made it catastrophically unlivable, then people should be allowed to return to the places from which, not to expel Israeli Jews, but to live in equality alongside Israeli Jews, a principle that is considered unfathomable in Israel-Palestine, even though it's the principle that we supposedly believe in the United States. So Jews, and trying to say that something has gone catastrophically wrong in our community when an Israeli government that claims to speak for the Jewish people and American Jewish leaders can watch a Jewish state with American weapons destroy most of the buildings, most of the hospitals, most of the schools, most of the agriculture, leave an unprecedented number of child amputees in Gaza, and then justify this with the flimsiest of possible justifications, as I go through in my book. Jewish tradition, as I understand it, believes in the infinite dignity of every human being. That is, we say every life is a universe.